How do I change our background so that you can't see the house behind me?
How's it going, everybody? And welcome to a live rendition of the Damon G Show, otherwise known not the cartoon rewatch today. We're not doing that today. We're going to delve
Boo.
into my personal favorite thing to do, and that's talk to people and find out what makes them tick, find out their whys, all that good stuff here on twitch.tv/Damon G Show or twitter.com/Damon G Show. And right to it, I'm joined by a very special guest, someone who I have known, I want to say since
Long time.
2006,
Dang.
maybe 2006, 2007, around that
Get
time.
out. Really?
Yeah, it's been that long. I was actually recounting it before we jumped on air, but author, coach, grand poobah of like all things awesome.
Thank you.
Miss Malaysia Duhaime, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. So I'm gonna just jump into it. A little
Let's do
background,
it.
just a little background for the folks, real quick. We've had technical difficulties the last hour. So the fact that we got this off the ground live now on social media, you're welcome. You're welcome.
The Lord has blessed us.
Apparently. Hold on, the chat thinks we're watching cartoons. We are not watching cartoons, sir.
Sorry.
No cartoons today. No cartoons today. Just a conversation amongst two people who give a shit about other people. That's the easiest way for me to say that.
Few and far between.
Yeah. So, I always ask this question. I started off this way. We'll start it off this way.
All right.
What is your personal why?
Ooh. You know what? I was thinking, I think about this a lot. And it's a bit complicated because I have ADHD, and no, I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. I have been re-diagnosed and I've been working through it. And for a long time, I didn't really have a why, which sounds silly, but if you asked me what my why was, I wouldn't be able to like accurately, I'd probably make something up. I'd be like, my dog, you know what I mean? But now that I'm starting to understand myself better, I'm understanding why it's so difficult for me to have a why. Because a lot of people with ADHD don't have an intrinsic factor. We have an extrinsic factor, right? So we are not motivated appropriately by, I need to do this because I'm going to better myself and I'm doing this for me. We are, for the lack of a better term, very nearsighted. So things don't become really important to us until they're right in front of our face. So I could have something like 10 years from now, or like even a week from now, and until like an hour before, I'm not accurately able to motivate myself, right? So my why is different with every different situation in my life, for every different motivation, every different goal in my life, which sounds really weird. I'm sure somebody out there can relate. But my why usually comes from an outside source, which is not the best thing to have, because if that outside source disappears, then the why has to shift. But for every stage of my life, there's a different why in it, and it changes. So, for instance, the growth that I've been through recently, the journey I've been through recently, the why was the ending of a relationship.
Okay.
And that really, that relationship really reflected back to me what I needed to work on. So my why became being better for other people in my life, so that I'm not projecting past traumas, childhood wounds, abandonment issues onto other people. So that became my why in this stage of my growth. It may shift later on. Later in a few years, if I'm in a relationship or I want to get married, I want to have kids, my why will shift. But the one thing that I want to make clear is that it's not that I don't love myself. It's not that I'm not dedicated to myself. It's my brain just works differently than other people, So I have a lot of friends who their why is like, I love myself and I want to do this for me. Amazing, beautiful, love it, good. That doesn't work for my brain. So my why really does shift with every stage of my life, every purpose that I have, every time that I grow.
if you're not growing, you're dying. That's something that a lot of people have said throughout the years. That's something I have championed. You need to grow, you need to change. We are not the same people we were 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Thank
And
God. Not for
as
you,
I
for me.
as I've told people this week, we've done some dumb, when we
Mm,
were younger, and we learned from it, hopefully. And it brings us to this point of just trying to figure out life in general. And I'm a counselor and a coach. You're a coach as well, and that's the kind of stuff that we try to get along to our clients. Is that we will evolve and we will change,
we
and
should,
the
yes.
reasons for doing things we should change, because some people are motivated by money, some people are motivated by ulterior motives, or just some people are motivated by just, I don't want to be a dick in life. Like, that's people's motivations.
That's fair.
And the way you pretty much presented it to me, it is a change for you, and I think that's a pretty good why. Just, how do I say this nicely to people? The word love gets thrown around so willy-nilly
Mm,
nowadays, and people don't really understand what having love for people is. Like, just a genuine love and appreciation for people. And
yeah.
we talked in the first 4 minutes of the show, like I know you well enough to know that you love people. You want
I
to
love
you want
people. And you know
Yeah.
why? Because I believe that love is the most transformative emotion that
Mhm.
you can have. Um, a lot of people will be motivated by like anger or hurt or whatever,
Sure.
things like that. And that's fine. But once you get over that anger, that hurt, your motivation will dissipate. Once
Mhm.
you heal, if you don't heal, that's a whole different story, and you're motivated by the wrong emotion. But love is the most powerful emotion you can have. And so if you love people and you want to be better for those people, you will turn inwards and you will fix what you need to fix in order to be better for the people that you love, because you don't want to project that onto other people. Hurt people heal to heal people. I know that saying, hurt people. I don't like it. um I feel that hurt people who hurt people are people that need more love, because there's something in them that has not driven them to grow.
Okay. Hmm.
You're like, let me ponder that for a second. One hot
I,
minute.
I, I'm legitimately pondering it, because I've often used the phrase "hurt people" because it's a reactionary
Hmm.
action. You
Reflection on
know,
how you feel about yourself.
correct, because everything is you pushed out,
Mhm.
as I have long been saying for the last decade. And I want to apologize to the audience if you hear a chainsaw outside my window. We had a power outage about an hour ago. Like I said, it's a miracle we got on air. And right when we're about to go on air is when they started to work.
And then my internet went down. So we're like, well,
So
we're going
so
to
forgive
roll
me if
with the
you
punches.
hear, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre going on outside my window. But
Where are
so
you, Dallas? Like,
exactly. Exactly. So, okay, you brought up something I thought was really interesting when you were talking about growth and healing. What does healing look like? What is
a
that?
mess. It is a mess. Um, a lot of people think the glow up is, and I don't blame social media, but social media is a reason for this, that people think the glow up should always be beautiful and positive and happy and healthy. And let me tell you, if you're not going inwards and doing that hard, dirty, gross work, you're not growing. And I think it's almost a detriment to people when people only show the good parts of their healing, because it's not real. And if you're watching that and you're thinking, man, I'm crying daily, I'm journaling and it's gross, I'm turning inwards and healing an inner child that is just banished and bruised, you're going to feel like you're not doing it right. But healing is messy. It happens through the tears, it happens through the pain, and you need to thrive through that pain in order to evolve and grow. Because if you get stuck and stagnant in that pain because you don't feel like your glow up is like everybody else's, you're going to stay there and you're going to stay in unhealed version, resentful version, upset version of yourself, and you're going to project that outwards. So growth is messy, it's ugly, it's difficult, and it's lifelong. You're not going to hit a stage where you're like, I'm good, I'm healed, I'm out. You know what I mean? It's like an onion. Every stage that you heal, every trauma that you heal, you're going to realize, oh, there's another one. And that happens like as you're unpacking trauma and as you're working through it, your brain will start to recollect things that you have forgotten, that you've compartmentalized in order to protect yourself. And so I hear this all the time on social media that once you're healed, you can do this. And once you're healed, you can get into a relationship. But that's not the case. Your healing is never going to be over. And if you think it is, then you need more healing.
Well, I didn't think there was a checklist for healing. And I know a lot of people assume that, they're just marking tallies off a box. Like I went to therapy, I did XYZ, I did the yoga retreat, I've done breathing exercise. It ain't that easy. It's not that simplified, So if you think it's a paint by numbers thing, it's very subjective to the person and their own journey.
And it's different for everybody. Yeah, different for everybody.
Okay, Rick in the chat says, is time another form of healing?
Only if you're doing the work in that time. You can stay the same person for 10 years and not realize you're the same person for 10 years. If you're not actively doing the work, time means nothing. You will stay stagnant. And that's because self-reflection is a skill that needs to be learned and developed. And a lot of people don't have that. And so if you're not reflecting, even daily, if you're not reflecting daily, if you go through the day and then you just go to bed, you wake up, you do the same thing the next day, you're staying stagnant. You need to take a moment, whether it's journaling, whether it's just sitting with your head and reflect on your day. What situations were you in? How did you react or respond? What did you do good? What could you do better? And in time, you will evolve every single day. But for you to heal, you need to actively do the work every single day. So you can't just expect heartbreak or inner child growth or shadow work to work with time if you're not doing the work. You can sit there in the same rumination for like 5-6 years and not heal an inch because you just haven't done anything with your time.
You mentioned shadow work. That's something I myself has started doing more so in the last, let's say 3 months or so. Can you give what your definition of shadow work is? And for those who may not know what that really entails?
So shadow work is a lot of work on the parts of yourself that you don't realize need healing, that you have buried down deep inside, that come up in situations where you then become reactive. For instance, and that's a very simple way to explain it. But for instance, if you're with somebody who triggers abandonment wounds, and you have this attachment to them because you're afraid of losing them. They may not be healthy for you, but you don't want to lose them because they're your safety, they're your comfort. Right there is some shadow work that you need to do. Why are you so afraid of letting go? Why are you trying to control the situation? What is it that is making you feel like you need to stay attached? It's probably a fear of lack, a fear of loss, abandonment wounds, and that's the shadow work that needs to be healed. And where does that stem from? That stems from your childhood. That stems from any dysfunction you may have experienced growing up. And that takes you right back to what we start having to work on. We start our shadow self at the age of 3 or 4. So you're literally going back to your baby brain and reprogramming your entire self, which is really difficult to do and takes a lot of work and takes a lot of accountability. You have to hold yourself accountable to the things that you have done, and make amends where necessary, where it will help rather than hurt other people. And that is very important work to be done if you truly want to grow. Otherwise, your growth is just going to be performative. You're going to, if you just feel okay, I did journaling, I feel good today, the minute you get triggered, you're going to turn back to something and be reactive. And in that moment is where you need to be where did that emotion come from? What is it stemming from? What is the root cause for it? And how do I work through it? And you can't do it by yourself. You need help. You need guidance.
Very well said. As someone who's been stubbornly trying to do it on his own for God knows how long, probably my entire life. Over the last maybe 3 years or so, I've done a really, I don't even want to say excellent job. I've done a serviceable job of trying to get to the bottom of all my triggers. Because we're never done learning about ourselves,
Mhm.
right? So nothing's perfect. You're going to learn something and then you're going to try to revert back to old behaviors. And I
'Cause
have
that's
had so many
easy.
clients because it's easy. The default is let me go out to the bar and drink a whole bottle of like whiskey, to
Sounds like a
cope with the
good
fact that
idea.
I had. I mean, at the time, it sounded like a good idea. The hangover may not let you have that, but that's part of the growth journey. You
Mhm.
realize the answers are not at the bottom of the bottle. They don't lie in somebody else. They literally lie within you, and that's something even me I've had to kind of just come to grips with, because, and I can self-disclose here, one of my biggest motivators was, as I was growing up, if I had X, then I would be okay. If
Mm.
I had
Mhm.
my own place, if I had this much money, if I was married to this person or was dating this person, my life would be perfect. And
Mm.
then something I'm now working through in therapy is when I got it, I felt nothing. I felt no sense of accomplishment. I felt no sense of relief. I felt no sense of like I've made it, which leads me to believe that's not what I really wanted. And a lot of we're motivated by money and freedom and everything on social media we see, Lambos and private jets and grifting people online. But that's not it, Chief. That is not it when it comes to just the personal development aspect. It's really dirty, it's really grimy. The self-reflection hurts. Sitting with your
Mhm.
shit hurts. And
But
I
that's
don't
where you
mean
grow in your discomfort. Yeah.
correct. And life is my entire life. The last 4 months has been one of discomfort. So
Mhm.
thankful for it. But it's tough. It's tough for everybody. And I know a lot of you who have followed me here or follow me in other locations. I'm over here trying to give everybody else the answers. But hey, even coaches are trying to figure it out. Because we can't be our authentic selves for y'all if we can't look ourselves in the mirror and say, you know what? I gotta call myself on my bullshit.
And
And I
be
love people.
vulnerable.
Mhm.
Your authentic self does not come without being vulnerable and dealing with your shame head on. Whatever shame you have in the past, you
Mhm.
need to deal with that. And those instant gratifications, that is a trauma response that you're working through. Because, for instance, if you're a very anxious person and you just, let me just look at this real quick because I need to confirm that I am right. And it's usually something negative that you're trying to confirm. Um, that is an instant gratification that is feeding into your trauma, that is feeding into your anxiety. The hardest thing to do is to turn around and be like, you know what? I'm not going to go and satisfy this anxiety immediately. I'm going to sit with it and it will pass. But we are so used to instant gratification, whether it's negative or positive, that we don't sit with ourselves. If you're like, oh, I wonder if um, I don't know, random example that is probably not impactful, but like, oh, this person told me they went here. Let me just go check their social media and see if they were lying to me. That right there is you soothing yourself in a negative way. You are feeding into that anxiety to get that instant gratification right there because you need to prove to yourself that you're right, even if you're not. Right in that moment, you need that self soothing rather than sitting with yourself and being like, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't
In that
matter.
moment, no, it does not matter.
In that moment. Yeah, and that feeling will pass. That like I need to know it will pass if you sit with yourself, right?
Mhm.
But a lot of people like that's another form of addiction, right? Getting that instant gratification when you have that anxious feeling, you need to prove yourself right. That is another form of you're addicted to the instant gratification,
Going to
right?
look for what you really want, and then you find it, and then you don't like that you found what you were looking for.
Exactly. And then you're like upset with yourself, and then your mood goes to shit. And it's like, if you would have just let that go in that moment and worked on you, instead of trying to self-soothe somehow, whether it's alcohol, whether it's that instant gratification, whether it's proving yourself right or wrong, whatever it is, whether it's drugs or you need to learn how to get that emotional sobriety where you're not looking for something to satisfy whatever it is in that moment.
Emotional sobriety. I like that. I'm writing that down. I'm gonna use that. Thank you.
That's a tough one. I learned that in ACA, Adult
Okay.
Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunction. And that's another thing. Find outlet. Like there are so many ways, like, and trust, we all have dysfunction. We come from a generation of hurt people
Yeah.
who will say, I turned out fine. No, my love, you didn't. You definitely did it. And then, people who think like, oh, going to therapy, they're just blaming this and they're just blaming that. Therapy is bad. Just repress, it'll go away. And it's like, no, that's why I'm here. That's why I need help.
That's cultural too.
It is very
It's not
cultural.
just age specific. Let's say boomers, for instance. We were raised on the keep it in. You're not, everything's fine here.
Don't
Nothing you
tell
see here.
nobody. They're going to think you're crazy.
Exactly. Keep it all in house,
I am
and even
crazy.
then, don't
That's
keep it in
why I'm
house.
going for help.
So it's tough because, like we mentioned, conditioning. To get out of that previous mindset takes unlearning everything you were taught up to that point. And to your point earlier about downloading when you're a child, the first 7 years of development is when you start downloading things on your subconscious mind. And then that's the stuff that becomes your base point for life. Like if you got beat when you were 5 by your parent, you're going to have something that comes up where every time somebody yells at you, you're expecting internally to get beat, because
even if you know that's not going to happen, your body feels that same emotion, that it still predicts that same outcome.
The body keeps the score, just like the book. Like that is a great book if y'all haven't checked that out. The Body Always Keeps the Score.
I will have to.
That's one of those, because your body knows the trauma responses because it's been through the ringer. So trying to treat it to something different. It's like me, for instance. I didn't eat vegetables for the first 30 years of my life. So when I started eating vegetables, it was like, wait, what is my body like? Whoa, what is this? We're so used to throwing this up. Like, what is this? It takes a while to get used to. So I'm using a jovial methodology, but it's the truth. When you're not exposed to these things of love, respect, common decency,
real
warmth,
safety,
pure safety, we're just foreign. Like, I'll be the first one to admit, I do not know a lot of the times what's safe when it comes to people. Like, I come from a don't trust nobody mindset. And me having to bring that into all my relationships, personal, romantic,
where your self-preservation is strong. Yeah.
Correct. It's all about keeping up the wall, the veil, so nobody takes advantage of you.
And that becomes like a whole self-sabotage right there. Correct. None of your relationships are going to work because you're always expecting that shoe to drop, right? Yes. And that's the thing with safety. Safety and skewed safety can come out in so many different ways. Like I for a long time had a very skewed idea of what a safe relationship was, which explained, and because so many years I've called you crying, that I was not in safe relationships. But my brain was like, this is safe because this is what I'm used to. That doesn't mean what I'm used to is safe. Right. And then when I did have a safe situation, like in my very early 20s, I dated somebody and I was safe with him. I ran because I'm like, you're weird.
You're weird because you're treating me well. Yes.
Yeah. You don't expect anything from me. You just want to care about me. You just freely give me love. I didn't do anything to earn it or to prove it. You're weird. I'm out. And then I'm going to run to somebody that I feel like I need to chase and prove that I'm worthy of their love. And once I get it, you get that little bit of gratification. You're like, this is normal. It's not. Comfort, familiar. It's familiar, right? And that's why a lot of people end up with that saying, oh, I have daddy issues. I go for people like my daddy. I go for people like my mommy. You know what I mean? Things like that. It's because that's familiar, not necessarily safe.
And that's where trauma comes in.
You're like,
Uh,
yeah.
that's trauma. That's a trauma bond. People throw these terms around. By the way, let me rant for 2 minutes here.
Go.
For those that don't know, I have been a clinical therapist for children and families for years before I started being a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just chose not to get licensed when I moved to Dallas. I don't want to do that. I left clinical a long time ago. I don't got the chutzpah anymore to do that. But y'all using pop psychology, all of you people in the interwebs using pop psychology, throwing around the term of trauma bonds or narcissism, and you and I've talked about this. Everybody thinks they know what a narcissist looks like because they saw
Mm-mm.
Instagram page. It's not that simple. It isn't that simple.
No.
I'm brushing anybody. How would you want me to broad brush you with a term of you're a narcissist when in reality you're like a humanitarian, but you're doing it for selfish reasons, so you must be a narcissist? No. Stop throwing around pop psychology terms.
Let
Actually,
me add to that rant when you're done.
go ahead.
Boy, that word narcissist is thrown around like confetti, like rice at a wedding.
Making it
Okay.
rain like money in
Like,
a strip
boom,
club.
boom, boom. You're a narcissist because you hurt me. You're a narcissist because you hurt me. Let me tell you one thing, okay? My book is based on having been with a real narcissist, a real psychopathic narcissist, okay? And first, there's a big difference between somebody who behaves in a narcissistic manner, either because they have trauma and they're reactive, or because they were raised by people with the same kind of traits and they believe that that behavior is normal. So that's how they act with other people. And they don't realize that it's not okay because my parents were like this. So it's normal, right? No, it's not. Does not mean they're a narcissist. I have been very narcissistic in the past. I grew and was like, oh man, that was narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I ain't going to be like that no more. I'm very empathic. I am an empath, which explains why I ended up in all these toxic relationships. But just because somebody, you're like laughing, you're like, oh, girl, I know. But just because somebody can be narcissistic does not mean they're a narcissist. There's a big difference. And there are different kinds of narcissists. There's a malignant narcissist. There's a covert narcissist. There's all sorts of different kinds of narcissists. And just because somebody hurt you and acted selfishly or was toxic, we all been toxic at one point in our life.
Yes, we have.
Every single one of us. Every single one of us. Nobody is perfect. Everybody works through trauma. Everybody has trauma responses, whether you like to believe it or not. That doesn't mean you're a narcissist. Somebody with narcissistic personality disorder is, first of all, it's underdiagnosed. Usually narcissists don't seek therapy because they don't think there's anything wrong with them. But also, just because somebody hurt you doesn't mean they're a narcissist. And we also have to look at our place in that situation. Was I with somebody who was a narcissist? Yes, I was. It was the most traumatic, most violent, most volatile, most debilitating relationship of my life. That was 4 years of my life that broke me to my core, isolated me from everybody that I loved, made me believe that I was no good, that I was trash, that I was garbage, I was beat, I was spit at, I was like assaulted. And I can easily point the finger and be like, this happened because you're a narcissist. This happened because you're an abuser. But what was my role in this situation? I ignored the red flags. I accepted this abuse. I still chased this individual, even though I knew they were no. When people are throwing broken glass at you and you're still trying to get their love back, that's a me problem. That is an inner child that is severely broken that I need to fix. And I allowed this person to stay. I could have left early on in the relationship and been like, bye, peace out, I'm gone. I know my worth, but I didn't. And that is my fault. So instead of pointing the finger, if you've been through a narcissistic relationship and you need to heal, the first step is turning inwards and being like, what did I do to allow this? And that's going to trigger a lot of people, because a lot of people are going to be like, I did not allow the abuse. Baby, you did. In some way, shape, or form, you did. And that's something that you need to reflect on.
Rick in the chat says, seriously, before the whole social media impact, I have seen serial narcissists. Yeah, that's surreal to see someone like that. And it really is, because
It
you
is.
don't know it in the
You think
midst
they're
of
the
it.
most amazing person when you meet them, especially one that is like a covert narcissist. They
Yes.
actually come out very empathetic. They're usually volunteering. They're usually, doing a lot of things for other people, but always with an ulterior, and they will always tell on themselves if you're paying attention. But a lot of the time we're not paying attention because we're ignoring those red flags.
But isn't that the whole I can change them motif? Isn't that the whole thing? That's
That
what a lot of people say.
self-sacrificing, it is harmful. Yes. And, that comes with childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And that comes with needing to, that's codependency right there. Being like, I can help this person. I'm going to sacrifice myself. I saw a picture the other day, and it was a Little Mermaid. It was like a rendition of it for a narcissistic group. And it was where she cut off her tail and was feeding it to her prince. And he's like having this great meal, and she's so happy because she's feeding him and he's happy. But she just cut her body in half to help this man. And I think that is a very accurate depiction of what it's like to be in a codependent relationship.
First off, cutting your tail off sounds painful. So let's just state the obvious here. Let me chop off my lower half. Like, ow.
But that's what happens. Let me give you my heart so you can stomp all over it.
And then give me what I want you to be happy, which is nothing.
Exactly. Because you've been raised to be like, you got to earn this, you got to earn that. And once you earn it, then you're going to get that love, and that happens in families where you are the black sheep, and there's always one. You know what I mean? There's always one that's going to be breaking the generational curses, and once you start healing, you're going to be not accepting certain things in your life, and you're going to be ostracized. And the minute you start getting ostracized, you're like, oh my God, how do I get this back? I don't like this. I don't like fighting with my family. I don't like feeling like I'm the only one that's different. And so then you revert back to your unhealed self because you're just so desperate for that love from your family that you've been trying to earn for your entire life, which is totally normal for people to feel that way. But that is why you need help. You can't do this on your own. That's why they have narcissistic abuse recovery courses. They have therapists who specialize in narcissistic abuse recovery, which, I have. And I've been seeing her since 2019, and God bless her, she saved my life. My ex-boyfriend also saved my life, not the abusive one, but, the recent relationship where he obviously reflected back at me the things that I needed to work on, because I was that person that was like, I've been to therapy, I'm good. And then I'm like, oh shoot, no, I'm not. I am not good.
Self-actualization. Oh, I love that.
It's a B.
Well, but that's the thing, and that leads me into my next question about society. The state of society in terms of taking ownership of your life, participating in your own rescue. But still, there are that subgroup of people who it's like, nah, it's not me. It's them. It's them. The finger pointing. And you know the phrase, if you're pointing a finger, there's three pointing back at you. So in your opinion, where is society in terms of the growth and development? Like, where are we? How do you feel about the state of the world of relationships and growth overall?
I want to say not good.
Okay. No, then that's honest, yeah.
I feel like we're better than we were, for sure. A lot of people are not staying in relationships just because they feel obligated, or because, oh, my parents were married and I don't believe in divorce and all that kind of thing. Like, we are now standing up for ourselves, but at the same time, we now have so much trauma that we need to unpack. And that's a lot of work. And everybody is so busy with their lives that they don't want to dive into that work, which is fair to a certain extent. Unpacking trauma and healing through it is very, very difficult. I was very lucky that I got to take time off work to do that, because I tried to do that while working, and I was a mess. I was more reactive trying to go through this healing process than I was previously, because now I'm trying to express emotion. And because I've been repressing my emotion my whole life, now I'm hyper emotional. I don't know where that middle ground is yet. Right. So I had to take time off work to be like, I am just lashing out at every single person because I was hypo emotional. Now I'm hyper emotional. I got to find that middle ground and I don't know how. So I just need to take time to myself. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't have that time. They don't have those benefits where they can take time off work and, you know, 3 months off work to work on themselves. And so they're not ready to open that Pandora's box, which is totally fair. But at the same time, then you need to find ways where you have outlets where you can, micro heal, so to speak, whether it's journaling, whether that's exercising, but also have that time where you're learning how to self reflect. And because only when you do that will you be able to have a healthy relationship. And mind you, not all relationships are going to be happy, happy, happy. That's not how it is. You're two people who come from different backgrounds, have different values, different beliefs, and you're trying to make something work. You're going to have arguments, you're going to have fights, but it's how do you argue, which is the real key component. If you're arguing, are you lashing out? Are you projecting? Are you pointing fingers? Are you having that conversation where it's, I feel this way? How do we work through it? How do we make sure this doesn't come up again in the same way? How do you argue but still respect each other?
Right.
And then not let that argument transpire again the next day.
That's something I've been in a group therapy for a while now, and that's something that we've talked about. Dirty fighting, where people just fight dirty using passive aggressiveness, like needling to get on your nerves. Like, that's not healthy. That's not the marks of a healthy friendship, relationship, partnership, what have you. And we're at the point now where we really got to start thinking about what we say before it comes out of our mouth and how someone else is going to react to it. And I'm guilty as fuck. Like, I have been the one that says first, ask questions later. I just say whatever's on my mind, and too bad, so sad. My mom, my late mom, was like that. She would say whatever the fuck was on her mind, even if it meant she was going to hurt everybody's feelings, because she had this urge to say what's on her mind because she was feeling some type of way. So she wanted all of you to feel that type of way too. So humans, you got to be a little bit more cognizant of, we talk about emotional intelligence, just not everything requires an immediate reaction. Or my personal favorite, the what about arguments. What about when you did this? What about when they did that?
And now you're derailing and fighting over things that happened 3 months ago. And that can come off as gaslighting and very narcissistic. But those are because you have not learned how to settle situations. And so things compile. And the next thing you know, you're fighting over 5 things rather than that one little thing that was really not that big of a deal. And that comes with learning to be responsive rather than reactive, which takes reflection and healing. And as you do that, yes, you may be super reactive as a person, but as you learn to be more responsive, that time, I say there's 3 stages, right? There's the initial stage, then there's your reaction, and then there's your response. And in between reaction and response, you have that reflection. Right. So maybe you're reactive, and then you reflect for a couple of days and you're like, oh, dang, I got to apologize. And then you go back and you apologize. And with healing, that reflection time gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And eventually you're able to say, you know what, I got to take a minute. I'm not going to react, and I'll come back and I'll respond. And that time is shorter every time, and then you're not projecting onto people and then having to come back and apologize for it later, because once you say something, it's easy to break somebody with your words. It's harder to repair it afterwards.
Correct. And in the moment, it's hard. Obviously, when you're in the heat of a moment, it's hard to keep, I want to say bite your tongue, but I mean more bite your emotional tongue. Just keeping conversation fluid, and not, like you said, derailing the topic of conversation. If I'm talking to you about, I don't know, like we're going to be late for something, and then you bust out, remember like 2 years ago, you made me late for this? I'm like, where the hell is this coming from? You
Now we
know,
find it.
it's like, okay, thanks for telling me now. And those people that kind of like toss the grenade. They'll throw the grenade in the foxhole, and it's like, boom, where'd this come from? So
Mhm.
I get it and I understand, but how can we help people improve in that regard?
That's where people need to help themselves.
Mm,
One, you need to lead with love, and that's very hard when someone's projecting onto you and you're like, I'm gonna lead with love. That's difficult to do, but that's a sign of growth. At the same time, it's the responsibility of the individual to be like, where is this resentment coming from? It's not the moment, it's not the situation, it's deeper than that. That situation triggered something in you
yep.
from your shadow self that you need to be like, okay, this is not the situation. This is a reaction from a deeply ingrained norms
Mhm.
that I need to work on. For instance, if something happens with a partner
Yep.
and all of a sudden you're projecting because you're angry that this person is going somewhere without you. It's not that that person is going somewhere without you. You probably have an abandonment wound that you haven't dealt with. That's
Yep.
where it's coming from. And that's where you need to take a minute and be like, okay, where is this coming from? Get curious about
Mm,
your reactions and your emotions. Get curious about it. Where is this coming from? Why am I acting this way?
yeah.
And then have that conversation with that person. Be like, okay, so I reacted that way, but it's because this triggered in me this situation. And I apologize and I need to work through it. It's not a you issue. This is a me issue. And I need to navigate this. And that's when if you have a supportive partner, they'll be like, okay, I'll help you work through it. What do you need from me? What can I do next time so that we can work through this trigger? And avoiding triggers is not the way to heal from them.
No, it is not.
You need to face that trigger, get curious about it, and then work through that.
So, being that you're on your own healing journey and you're going through your own triggers, give me maybe two things in your journey that you've learned about yourself and something you called yourself out on. Like, let's say like you learned about yourself and growth and potential, etc., but also a time you held yourself accountable and been like, oh shit, this was on me.
I am dysfunctional. That is something that I learned. I grew up thinking like I was relatively well rounded
Mhm.
um, because of norms that I grew up in. And it turns out I'm not. I'm really dysfunctional. I grew up in dysfunction. And that's not to blame family. Everybody has their generational trauma that they then pass down and you don't realize it. So people can do the best that they can, but still not do right. You can grow up with a roof over your head, food on the table, parents who are still married, still have deeply ingrained dysfunction. So that's something that I had to come to terms with um, and realize that I am the cause of my own issues because of the way that I react to certain situations because of deeply ingrained traumas that I have. And trauma is trauma is trauma. A lot of people will minimize other people's traumas because they're like, oh, that's not that bad. Listen, that person feels it differently and it is that bad. Okay. Just because you have a higher level of tolerance for trauma, which is not good, um, doesn't mean that it's not impactful for that individual. So understanding that as well is something that I had to come to terms with because I would gaslight my own damn self. I'd be
Mm,
like, girl, that wasn't that bad. Why are you reacting this way? And then I had to like forgive myself and be like, no, you know what? Your body, your inner child, it really was that bad. Don't belittle yourself. Don't minimize your trauma because then you're not going to work through it. And that's something that I had to work through, understanding my dysfunction and stop gaslighting myself.
ooh. Okay. Can you give me another example of self gaslighting? Because I love when people talk about this.
Whew, how much time do we have? No, just kidding. Self gaslighting when you're like, oh, that's not that bad. I can deal with it. Or when you say like, you know what, I have a high level of tolerance for this and that and the other. That's not good.
Mm,
You're minimizing your issues by doing that. Or if you say, for instance, let me think of, oh man, I have so many situations and like none of them are coming to mind. But those are two of them. Or saying like, you know what, that wasn't that bad. I've been through worse.
oof, I've been through worse.
Yeah, you have. That doesn't mean that that situation is also okay. And now you're minimizing your issues because you're comparing it to something that was worse, even though it still triggered the same level of either abandonment or whatever woundage it is. It still triggered that same level, but you're like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Just like
Mm.
earlier, I was like, the internet's down. It's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. No, it's not fine. I just gaslit myself into like convincing myself that the situation is a-okay and whatever. But no, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. I should have been like, you know what? My battery's almost dead. My internet just went down. It's back now, thank God. But like, I just gaslit myself into minimizing a situation that I should have been like, you know what? I feel frustrated right now.
Yep.
I'm going to take a second. I'm going to work through it. I'm not going to push. I'm not going to minimize. I'm just going to I'm going to sit with this for a minute and I'm going to deal with it. But instead, I was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And that's another form. And gaslighting is not just like, minimizing or whatever. It's avoidance. It's redirection. It's deflection. Those are all forms of gaslighting. Like there are so many different forms of gaslighting.
Yes.
And if you take note during the day, you'll notice you do that to yourself often.
Of course we do, because that's what humans are used to. They're used to
Sweep it
just.
under the rug. It's fine.
Mhm. I've often said people can justify anything. If you give them enough time, they will find a way to justify anything that happens to them, positive, negative, or stuff they've done to people, positive or negative, otherwise. And that's a real deadly thing when it comes to human interaction
Mm-hmm.
and personal relationships. Because, for instance, you mentioned like, hey, I'm getting beat. Oh, that's okay. It's like you're justifying the reasons why you're getting beat, right? Or you're being like hurt. It's like, oh, but I did this to cause them to do that. Or I behaved this way, so maybe I shouldn't do this from now on. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. The bottom
And in
line
one
is you got
sense,
beat.
yeah, and
Like,
in one sense, you're right. If you're reflecting, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, there's
yeah.
step one. Step two is recognizing, was that reaction appropriate from the other
Mhm.
person, though? Was
Was
it?
that emotional intelligence being displayed? No, not at all.
No. So in one sense, yeah, good, you're reflecting. In
Mhm.
another sense, you're accepting,
Yes, reflecting,
which is
accepting.
a problem.
Yeah, we're not supposed to just accept blindly. I always tell people question everything, question yourself all the time, question what you want, question your motivations in life. You'll because they change. Like we said at the beginning of
Mhm,
this interview, you are constantly changing and evolving tastes, likes, things of that nature. And it's painful to go through that. And some of us would rather just go through the motions, like we were saying before, than challenge ourselves and push us out that comfort zone of just la la la, this is fine. It's like the meme with the dog in hell. Like,
which
oh,
is
this
kind
is
of always
fine.
done it. Yeah, that dog where it's like, it's fine, everything's fine.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
The
Nothing to
house
see
is
here,
burning down, it's okay.
Mhm. So we don't look right. And you mentioned generational curses. And I'm not trying to throw my family under the bus here, but we learned that. That was passed on. My grandparents, my great grandparents passed that down to my parents, and my parents passed that down to us. And thankfully, knock on wood, I don't have kids. So I will never pass that on to someone else, be it a child or someone, who I'm counseling or something like
Mhm,
that. Just,
mhm,
it's just frustrating. And I know the viewers out there, they deal with it too. And they just don't want to admit out loud, and that's fine. As long as you're willing to put the work in to try to accomplish some semblance of self growth and development, then you're doing yourself a prime service and not a disservice by just
mhm,
going through the motions. I know before I get out of here, I want to ask you a couple more things. If you're comfortable,
mhm.
can you walk me and the audience through your own personal healing journey? You've discussed it earlier briefly about what triggered it, but can you just walk me through the realizations? Can you just walk me through, lessons, things of that nature of your own personal journey?
So my journey has been in stages.
Mhm.
Really starting in 2018, 2019 when my ex-boyfriend was arrested. Um, I was forced I wasn't forced, but I was pushed, I was directed by the court system to get into counseling therapy. And mainly because they said, in the state that you're in right now, if you testify, they will not believe you because your memory is so blotchy from all the trauma that you will sound crazy. And so I got into counseling. I had no idea what narcissistic abuse was, no idea. And I was matched up with a narcissistic abuse recovery therapist who had been in, a narcissistic abusive relationship in the past. So she knew what she was doing. And so there was that stage where I learned about narcissistic abuse. I started my healing journey. I moved out of my old apartment because there was so much energy, so much trauma there. I tried to start fresh. Then I I took like a good year and a bit off to figure myself out, to get comfortable with myself, to really start to like myself. I would, take myself to the movies. I would go to dinner by myself. You know what I mean? Like just really kind of like reconnecting with myself. And then I started a new relationship with, a man that was the love of my life. And you don't realize how difficult your next relationship is after you've been in a severely abusive one. That is the real test, because triggers will come up all the time and you'll end up projecting onto that person. And so, granted, there's, both of us did things that were not great in the relationship. I'm not going to tell his story, but, he had a lot of things that he needed to work on from his past. I had a lot of things that I thought I had worked through, which I hadn't. I was able to work through it by myself when I was in peace, when I had nobody else that I needed to like accommodate. But then the minute somebody else comes in and now I have to deal with somebody else's emotions at the same time, that's when shit hits the fan, pardon my language. But that's when you realize, man, I had not worked through that. I was fine when I was by myself and had nobody to answer to. But now that I do, things are coming up and I'm reacting differently than I would have when I'm sitting by myself in the comfort of my own home with nobody else to hold me accountable.
Right.
And so because we were very similar, he reflected back at me all the things that I needed. He mirrored what I needed to work on. And so I would get upset over things with him that turns out I needed to work on. And, this is during the pandemic, very stressful. We were running a gym, working in vet med, like very, very difficult times. Just, not the right time, especially after coming out of an abusive relationship. But everything happens for a reason. And I would not be where I am right now if it wasn't for the lessons that he reflected back at me and all those things that I needed to work on. So, there was the initial stage where it's like, okay, I'm good. And then even our relationship, I thought I was good. I was like, I don't need, my therapist was stuck in Armenia too. So it's not like I was able to connect with her. But, I'm thinking, I'm good. I'm not good. Clearly, I'm not good. And I still need to work on things. But my ego kept me from working on things. And then when all of that dissolved and that last bit of trauma was too much for like my soul to take, it pushed me into a new level of growth where I was like, I'm never done. I am never finished. And, I am consistently holding myself accountable. And even when, because we're still friends, and things will come up and things will trigger me. And instead of, back in the day when I'm like, you made me feel like this, it's like, okay, why do I feel like this? You didn't make me feel this way. I made myself feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
I chose to feel this way because of wounds that I have not addressed. And I will turn, and he's really great with having conversations where I'll be like, listen, I was passive aggressive or whatever because it triggered this wound in me and I apologized for that. And those are the kind of conversations that I now have, right? Rather than pointing the finger, turning inwards. So like my healing was in stages and it was very messy and it had a lot of ego driven motivations where it's like, I've been through therapy, I'm good. And it's like, no, girl, you are not good. And your ego is taking over. And this man is trying to show you that. And because he's trying to show you that, your ego is taking over again. Yep. You know what I mean? And so it's like, first it was the trauma healing. Then it transpired into the spiritual healing. And that's when I really started to make progress.
Okay.
It's when I turned to the spiritual healing. I addressed my inner child wounds, which, when I was in narcissistic abuse recovery, I dealt with the trauma from the narcissist.
Yeah.
Now, my therapy with my therapist has transitioned to dealing with the trauma from my childhood, because that led me to the narcissist. That led me to, the issues in my last relationship. And so, you know, turning inwards, the shadow work, the inner child work, the self reflection, the meditation. I listen to like 852 hertz when I go to bed. You know what I mean? The vibrations, the energy. That is this new phase of healing. And who knows, in a year, I might be on a different form of a healing journey, but still necessary. And then in 5 years, I'll be in a different form. And then in 10 years, I'll be in a different form. But I know now it is never over. It is always work. And if I'm not willing to do the work on myself, I am going to consistently lose any abundance that comes into my life, because I'm going to self-sabotage and push it away.
Self-sabotage. That's another one of those. We just do it as a reflex action. A lot of us,
Yeah.
and
And
not
we don't
realizing we do
realize
it.
Yeah. And again, self-preservation, fear of lack, fear of loss, fear of abandonment, right?
Because a good majority of us, if not the vast majority of just humans in general, just we have some sort of trauma responses no matter what. Our body,
Always.
our mind, our mouth will respond to trauma in very unique ways. So some people curse at you, some people will shut down, some people will get violent.
Some
There's a
people will
lot of
run, you know what I mean?
literally run.
Literally out the door, in the car, they're gone.
Fun quick story. I remember it was maybe about 2006, and I was dating somebody, and they were so embarrassed to be seen with me by their family that I believe they thought they saw one of their family members. They ran and hid in the store while they waited for supposedly the family member to walk past us.
I'd be like, are you okay?
They didn't want to be seen holding my hand in front of this
man.
person. So it's the fight or flight really did kick in, and she flew. So
And the brain just shut off immediately and was like, this is what we do to be safe.
Self-preservation, right? And so one of my friends, she refers to her as the road runner, and like that's
the legs are spinning, but they're staying in one spot.
exactly like the cartoon where
which is like a good analogy, because literally her wheels are spinning, but she's not growing, right?
So that's pretty much like we're talking about reactions and just trauma responses. Before I let you go, I want you to talk about the book. You've contributed to books before.
Yes.
In the past.
Yeah.
So walk me through this book and why your book is so special to you, aside from the fact that you're a published author.
Man, it is special because it's literally the most vulnerable thing I've ever done. Okay. It is my personal journal, which I had no intention of publishing at all. And it was my journal from, when I separated and going through therapy. And when I wrote in my journal, I had no intention of sharing it with anybody, because it's hard to read. When I look back at it, it's still very hard to read. But a lot of people don't have that opportunity to be given free therapy or to even understand what they're dealing with. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back. I'm going to write 3 lessons that I've learned for every entry, and I'm going to publish it. And it's going to be scary because, I talk about suicide, wanting to like commit suicide in that book. In one of the journal entries, I talk about, I was in a very dark place in some of those entries, right? But that's the nitty gritty. That's the real. And somebody out there is feeling that way. And so with every entry, I wrote 3 lessons that have helped me get out of it. And it's not lessons about pointing fingers. All the lessons are about me turning inwards. Okay. And what have I done? What have I learned? What can I do better? And, if that helps one person, perfect. I didn't write this book to become a rich author or anything like that. I just really wanted to give people guidance, because I was very lucky to receive that, and I see
Mhm.
so many people who don't get it, or are too scared, or don't know where to look, or don't know where to go. And so this is just a resource that they can have. Of course, everybody's journey is different, but it took a long time for me to publish that book because I started it in 2019. I started writing my lessons in 2020, and then when I finished it actually this year, um, I was reading back through my lessons and I'm like, oh, no, no, no. We're not publishing that one. That came from a hurt, unhealed self. And not that
Mm,
I'm healed, but like I noticed that a lot of the lessons were based off of hurt, um, at the time. And, I've done a lot of growth since my last relationship. And so a lot of my lessons have changed or evolved or grown. And so I felt like this year was a good year to publish it because I felt confident in the lessons that I was writing,
sure.
rather than, like I said, when I went to go read the lessons that I had written previously back from 2020, I was like, oh, I don't think that way no more. We're going to change that.
Okay.
This is a better advice. And so, the book is very, very personal, but also it's, a version of me that for a while I was really ashamed of.
Okay.
But I realized if it wasn't for that person, I wouldn't be this person. So I'm
Okay.
very thankful that I had gone through what I went through, because without it, I wouldn't have had this evolution.
It makes us who we are, or at least who we're turning into. We
Hmm.
take snippets of every experience and we bring those forward to with us.
Hmm.
And that's the stuff sometimes we just got to work on the healing aspect and take those lessons to heart. What's the name of the book, firstly?
It is called Girl with a Snake: Surviving the Narcissist.
Oh wow. Okay. That's even got biblical tones in it, girl with the snake.
Oh
So
yeah, that's pointed. Um, but a girl with a snake is one of my oracle cards that I was, doing an oracle reading one day, and that card popped out, and it's a
mm,
relationship between an empath and a narcissist, and I was like, oh, perfect.
life
This
imitating
is
life.
what I'm calling
Right?
the book.
And where can people find it?
It is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you're in Canada, it's also available at Chapters Indigo and Coles.
Mhm.
Um, so there's the link on my Instagram to all of the sites. So it's widely available. It's also on ebook.
Okay.
Um, so if you don't want to buy the copy, you can read it on Amazon and on Kindle. So it's out there, and I just really hope that it helps guide somebody through some form of growth, some form of healing.
Someone is going to heal from it. I'm sure someone's going to have their healing journey starting or going through this because of this interview. Where can people find you if they want some more insights?
So I'm on Instagram,
Mhm.
Eurasia.Duhaime. I'm also on TikTok, Eurasia Lee. So you can find me on there. And I'm always open to messages or people asking questions. I'm an open book, pun intended.
Literal.
But it's I want to heal to help heal. I want to share what I learned so that I can help other people heal through their journey.
Mhm.
And just like other people help me heal through my journey. So, I just want to continuously pass that on as I receive it as well.
That- That's perfectly said. What you said at the beginning of this interview, you said hurt people help people. Is that something you
Hurt
said earlier?
people should heal to help
Should heal
heal
people.
people. Yeah.
That is something that one belongs on a t-shirt. Two, that needs to be kind of the going forward of life. My personal motto is just don't be a dick, but
You say that
that's a
often.
better way. That's a better way of saying don't be a dick. I'm an acquired taste for some people. This. Not everybody likes my messages. It's fine,
It's
but no,
fine.
that's
It's fine.
that's the best way to put that.
No
And
big deal. Okay.
thank you for joining me. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having
I
me.
adore you. Go check
Thank
us
you.
out. Go follow me down there also at Damon G Show across the board. I do a gamut of things. I coach, I counsel. According to my one friend Edward, he says I therapize people. I don't know what
You
that means.
therapized me for years.
Yeah. So if you're interested in wanting to get to know that part of me, Damon G Show across the board, send me a DM, send me a message, and let me know what you think. where are you in your healing journey? And can't wait to read it. Until then.
Thank you.